What really happens when you take a loss, right? The number one thing that happens is that you start blaming yourself. You start blaming, man, like, I took a loss yesterday as well. This isn't working. Like, I want it to work, but it's super, super hard. I mean, maybe there's something wrong with me. I mean, at the same time, you're angry at the market. And when you're angry at the market, that results in revenge trading. Because I remember when I first started and I was winning trades the first month and a half, and then I started learning newer things, so I deviated from my original plan and started learning new things. And when I would take a loss, I would get really angry at the market. I would say, man, this is unacceptable, right? And when you go into mode of unacceptable, it's like you become a kamikaze in the market. It's like you take a loss and then you want to take another loss and then you want to take another loss. It's not like about taking losses. It's about securing losses. Like you're securing a loss after loss. So it's like you're building a pyramid of losses, and that doesn't help anyone. So whenever you're taking a loss, you just need to just relax and just be cool. But at the same time, when you take a bad trade, you also feel like, like maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm dumb. It's not working. The only reason these things don't work is because after you take a loss, you don't step back and take a look at things logically. Like, okay, what did go wrong? What did I miss? These are really important. And the number one thing that I noticed people would do was they would blame the community or the crowd. They would say, now this happens to a lot of people in this webinar here too. Like when you take a trade, or let's say when you're in a trade, right? Let's say you're in a sell and you come to a webinar or you come to a group chat and you start looking at messages. And if you're in a sell and when someone says it's a buy, or when you have a group of people saying it's a buy, or maybe like, someone like me who says it's a buy, and you close your sell and you take a buy, and then you lose the trade. Now what happens is, now once you've lost the trade, you start blaming everyone around you. And that blame comes from the fact that, okay, man, I had the correct bias, but I followed these guys. These guys were saying this is going to be a buy, and I was in a sell, and I closed my sell and took a buy, and I took a loss. So that's not being confident enough in your own analysis. Because the thing is, no matter how good Ted is, or I am, or some other person is, I mean, we will have our bad days too. There has been times where I have been wrong and someone really, really new has been right. And I've acknowledged that. So you can't blame community. You have to see that, okay, how confident was I in my analysis, or did it really make sense? And I can guarantee you 100% of the time, whenever you take a trade, you are very confident in your analysis, and you have to let it play out. Because if you take an independent trade, and if you close that trade and take a different trade based on someone else's opinion or based on what a group is doing as a whole, and you lose that trade, then number one thing is you didn't know why you entered the trade. Number two thing is, I mean, you didn't understand market structure, or you didn't understand what was really going on. Okay, so someone is being a retard over here. So I'm just going to disable the participant. Okay, perfect. Next thing is, when you take a loss, is you feel emotions like depression, anxiety. This mainly comes from after you've taken a string of losses. I remember a time, it was a very, very dark time, that I couldn't win a trade. If I would win a trade, now maybe some of you are going through this time, like when you'd win a trade, it would be on a very, very small lot. Like you open the charts, you come through the charts, you've taken losses the previous day, and you're like, okay, you know what, I'm going to take a 1 cent. I'm going to take a 1 cent lot, and I'm going to take a 1 cent trade, and you take a 1 cent trade and you win the trade. You're like, oh, perfect, I won this trade, and now you're like, okay, perfect, I won this trade. Now I'm going to go in and now I'm going to open my regular lot and I'm going to take that trade. And when you take a regular lot trade, you lose the trade, and now not only you've won a trade previously, but on a very, very small lot, which equated to a small monetary gain. But now you've taken a second trade with a regular lot size, and now your loss is way bigger than that small win you had. And that's where anxiety comes in, because now essentially you've taken two trades. One was a winning trade, and one was a losing trade. The winning trade was a small lot because you were afraid, you weren't confident, you wanted to take a test position, but the second one was your normal trade. So you really have to understand that whenever you're coming through charts, you have to keep your percentages the same. You have to keep your lot sizes the same. You cannot change your lot sizes, because once you start changing them over and over again, you're going to start feeling, emotions like anxiety, depression. There's going to be fear in the market, so it's really, really, really important that, I would say, don't go into taking test trades, because your test trades is still one trade. A trade is a trade, whether it's on a 1 cent lot or in a 100 lot. Like someone, if you can take a 1 cent lot trade and someone on the other end is taking a 1 lot trade, it's the same move, it's the same candle, and it's the same pips. The outcome is different, right? The only difference is that you took it on a very, very small lot because you were fearful or you wanted to test the market. And then the second trade you took with a normal lot and you lost the trade, right? So it's really important when you do take a loss, try taking a loss on a consistent lot size, and then when you do take a loss, just step back and see that, okay, how could I have done this differently? Again, the other thing is like you don't understand market structure. There's not enough education. And like the thing is like when you don't understand market structure, this means that you took a trade based on someone else's idea. Like if you're a new trader and you just execute based on someone else or based on an analysis that someone else sent, which you don't really understand, but it looked good to them, and it looked good to you now just because maybe they're somewhat better or they have more experience, that's the wrong mentality to have, because that means you don't have enough education to understand why the trade was taken, or maybe you haven't spent enough time watching a certain thing to take that trade. Sometimes what happens is now there are candles, right? So if you're looking at let's say that if you're looking at a candle that closed bearish with no wick at the bottom, now if someone who's experienced, they would say, well, even though if the trend is down and the candle has no wick at the bottom, this may mean that there's no range for the next candle to go down, so it might go up. Or someone who's new, they might say, well, the candle is still bearish and, I'm going to take a sell and candle will go down. And what if the next candle, it wicks down and starts to go up? So that's the kind of experience you get in the market. Because if you take a sell over here multiple times, right? Let's say if this happens multiple times, you take a sell, or if a candle closes bullish with no wick at the top, you take buys multiple times, and you see that, okay, well, I've done this multiple times, and price has really moved. Let's say price has moved the opposite way, almost, like maybe 60% of the time. So maybe now, based on my experience, this is not a good position to take. Now you're gaining experience. Now you're gaining some sort of confidence. Now you understand that, okay, you know what? I've seen this happen a lot of times and my stops have been hit. So maybe when candles close with no wicks at the bottom or the top, maybe I want to, ignore that. Maybe I want to see how the next candle performs. So the more you look at the charts, the more you make notes, mental notes, the better you're going to get. And the best thing to do after you take a loss is to just sit back and watch what was there that's something you missed, right? So what we're going to do is we will talk about things to do when you take a loss, right? What are some of the most important things you